Welcome everyone, Dylan Gemelli here today with a brand new video for you. So today I'm going to talk about how to properly use an aromatase inhibitor. But before we get into that, I need to reiterate to you, I'm not a doctor, so anything I say in these videos is for your entertainment purposes only. I'm not advising nor condoning you to use any of the things that we talk about, and what you do with this information is completely and utterly up to you. So let's talk about how to properly use an aromatase inhibitor. Now, I see so many wide and conflicting and different ideas about aromatase inhibitors. I see people saying they'll completely ruin your gains, don't use them. I see people saying you absolutely have to use them. I see people saying that Nolvadex and Clomid are aromatase inhibitors when they're not. I see everything possible thrown out there. First and foremost, Nolvadex and Clomid are estrogen blockers, which is far different than aromatase inhibitor. And I'm going to do a video comparing the two and the differences there. Understand that those are not aromatase inhibitors. They're SERMs, selective estrogen receptor modulators. Far different than an actual aromatase inhibitor. So the main aromatase inhibitors that you're going to see used are aromacin and arimidex. You will see people using arimistane, and you will see people using letrozole. Now, aromacin and arimidex are the two main, most commonly used AIs, all right, which is aromatase inhibitor. Letrozole is more of something that you're going to use as an emergency or as an anti-gyno protocol, but you don't necessarily want to use that on cycle unless you are just supremely estrogen prone, or in the case of using something like Trestolone, where that might be your only option. Like somebody like me, for example, if I was to run Trestolone, being that I'm extremely estrogen prone, I would either have to extremely high dose aromacin, or I would have to go with letrozole, which I really wouldn't care to do, but it might be the only way to do it. Now, I would never even consider running Trestolone, knowing that I'm so estrogen prone, but just as an example. So, first and foremost, how do you know what you need? Now, aromacin is a suicide inhibitor, which means it's going to actually kill off estrogen. Arimidex won't actually kill off estrogen. It's more like a suppressor, so to speak. So it's not quite as strong. However, you might say, well, I definitely want aromacin. And I'm more of a fan of aromacin because I'm more estrogen prone. But arimidex is definitely beneficial, definitely works, and definitely useful. Now, how do you know which one you need? Well, first and foremost, you find out how estrogen prone you are through blood work. All right? That's why you do pre-cycle, mid-cycle, and post-cycle blood work, because you need a baseline to start with pre-cycle. Mid-cycle, you need to see how certain things are affecting you, right? So you know how to adjust, if you need to make changes, etc. And post-cycle, obviously, to see if you've recovered. Now, if you're starting off, if you're a new user, I generally tell people to go with aromacin. Depending on what you're doing, generally your first cycle is going to be test only. Well, it should be. And that can give you a good gauge because testosterone converts to estrogen. It can give you a good gauge on, how estrogen prone you are. And then now this is just assuming that you have quality tests, quality aromacin or arimidex, etc. By doing mid-cycle blood work, you can see how estrogen prone you may or may not be. The thing is here is that arimidex, for people that are not estrogen prone, some people are so not estrogen sensitive that aromacin is too much for them. I have several guys in this industry that I respect highly that no rhyme or reason, that they simply just don't have any estrogen problems whatsoever. Even running tests at doses I don't recommend, but 750 with little AI and no estrogen conversion. Now that's rare, okay? It's very rare, but there are anomalies out there. There's exceptions to rules no matter what we're doing. And these people, they can't even use aromacin because it's just way too much for them. It just really is. And that's where arimidex is definitely the safer and better option. So it's something to consider. Now, what are standard everyday doses? Well, I always tell people the standard doses to start out would be 0.5 milligrams every other day of arimidex or 12.5 milligrams every other day of aromacin. Now, this is where it gets tricky because every individual is different. I always need more than that, almost always. And I run low dose tests, etc. Well, this was when I was using, and I'm not anymore. Arimidex, being that it's not quite as strong, 0.5 milligrams every other day is a pretty strong dose of Arimidex, but if you're estrogen prone and you just don't want to use aromatase, you don't have access to it, etc., you may need to bump that if you're estrogen prone to every day or 1 milligram every other day. Really based on, what you want to do convenience-wise. Either way, it's effective. Now, you got to be careful with aromatase because it is very strong. 12.5 milligrams every other day may be too much for you. And if you start to... I've done a video that you need to watch on high and low estrogen symptoms in men. Unfortunately, a lot of times the same symptoms are present whether it's high or low estrogen. Now, obviously, you start to develop gynecomastia and things like that. You got high estrogen. But sometimes, like the lethargy, the loss of libido, etc., that's common for both high and low estrogen. Now, some differences is you'll retain more water. You could have gynecomastia if you got high estrogen. But those are telltale signs. Then the blood work comes into play, so you can tell whether or not you're taking too much or too little. But there is no straight 100%, this is the answer and that's it. That's why this is so tricky. And that's why people will say, oh, it'll kill your gains, it'll ruin this, it'll ruin that. Because they may have had that happen. But it's because they were running too much of something, or perhaps, they had compounds that weren't converting to estrogen and still using an AI at the same dose. See, if you're running, D-ball tests, things like that convert to estrogen, DECA, EQ, you're going to need different sets of standards as opposed to, hey, I'm just running test, Winstrol, Masteron, Primabol, and things like that. Well, you may not need as much, especially since some of those compounds have anti-estrogen properties, which is a whole nother thing that you got to take into consideration. Masteron, things like that, Proviron, they have anti-estrogen properties. They're not a substitute for an AI whatsoever, but they can help to lower your estrogen as well. And those guys that aren't estrogen prone, when they're running things like that, they find that when they run an AI, it can be problematic for them. It can be too much. So it's not easy, everybody, okay? If I truly wish I could give you one straight answer and go, you need this no matter what. But every single one of us is different. It's just the same thing with dosing. Look, I can sit here and tell you 50 milligrams of Winstrol all day long, but you know what? For some people, that's just way too much. It just wrecks their joints, etc. And same thing with anything else that you run. That's just an example. So I can give you numbers. These are average numbers to base off of that are general. But it does not mean that for you that is absolutely correct. This is one of those trial and error things where you have to stay on top of things. That's why people go, oh, I'm not doing blood work like this and that. Well, that's fine. You don't have to. But when you start having problems, you can't just go, well, I know it's because of this or because of that, because of this, if you're not monitoring your blood work. You might assume that, you might have certain symptoms of that, but it's not always accurate. The only possible way to be completely accurate is to have blood work, to monitor things, to trial and error this out, and to see what works best for you. Because what works best for me, or your buddy, or Mr. Olympia, does not mean that it's going to work for you. Okay? So you've got to remember that. This is so important. That each individual is different and has a different reaction, and you have to accommodate your own self and not worry about anybody else or what they're doing. You can always get ideas from everybody and get numbers, but when it comes down to it, you always do what's best for you and how your body responds, not anybody else's. So, that being said, www.icearms.com/forums. I'm also on the Elite Fitness Forum as well as the Evolutionary Forum. Email me, Dylan@icearms.com, and please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That being said, stay tuned for plenty more to come. Dylan Gemelli, signing off.